The river is the color of strong tea tonight, and it moves without a sound. I am sitting low in a wooden boat, close enough to the water to touch it, and the forest on either bank has folded itself into a single black wall. There is no horizon here after dark. There is only the water in front of the bow, and the noise of the trees, which never truly stops. I have traveled a great many rivers. Most of them, after a while, begin to feel like roads. You learn their bends, you trust their surface. This one does not let you do that. Borneo keeps something back. It shows you a brown, ordinary river, and it hides almost everything that matters underneath. Let me tell you a little about where we are before we go any further. This is the third largest island on Earth, after Greenland and New Guinea. 3 nations share it. Malaysia and Brunei hold the north, and Indonesia holds the vast south, the part they call Kalimantan. And draped across nearly all of it is a rainforest so old that it makes the Amazon look almost young. By most reckonings, it has stood here, in one form or another, for well over 100 million years. It was already ancient when the last dinosaurs were alive. A forest that old has had time to make things, strange things, things that have never needed to explain themselves to us, because until very recently, we were not here to ask. What follows are 7 of them. 7 discoveries out of the Borneo forest and the rivers that drain it, of the kind people like to call terrifying, and some of them have earned that word honestly. But I want to make you a promise at the start, the same promise I always make. I will keep what is true, separate from what is merely frightening. Where a story has outgrown the facts, I will say so, plainly. That line matters here more than almost anywhere, because Borneo, as you will see, is a place where the real thing is very often stranger than the legend built on top of it. We will count them down, from the 7th to the 1st, and as we go, they move closer. Closer to us, closer to the water, and closer to the moment you realize that the most frightening thing on this island was never the story. It was the animal the story was trying to describe. Let us begin gently, with a flower, number 7. The bloom that counterfeits a corpse. There is a smell in this forest that arrives before anything else. You will catch it on the air minutes before you find the source, and every animal instinct you own will read it correctly. It is the smell of something dead, sweet and thick and wrong. You follow it, expecting a carcass, and instead you find a flower. It is enormous, a single reddish bloom, mottled with pale warts, wide enough to fill your arms, sitting low on the forest floor like something that has fallen out of the sky. This is Rafflesia, and it holds a record that sounds almost invented. It is the largest single flower on the whole of the earth. The biggest ever measured spread, more than a meter across, and weighed as much as a small child. And it is a liar. Everything about it is a piece of theater aimed at deceit. That corpse smell is deliberate. The flower manufactures the stench of rotting meat, and it even warms itself slightly to help the odor carry, all to summon the carrion flies and beetles that lay their eggs in dead flesh. They come looking for a body to feed their young. They find this instead, and in their confusion they carry its pollen from one bloom to the next. The flies are tricked. The flower is fed. But the strangest thing about Rafflesia is not its size or its smell. It is what the plant is missing. It has no leaves. It has no stem. It has no roots. It has no green in it anywhere, which means it cannot feed itself from sunlight the way an honest plant does. For almost its entire life, it is not visible at all. It lives as a network of fine threads, hidden inside the body of a jungle vine, drawing everything it needs from its host, like an infection with no outward sign. The forest around it does not know it is there. Then, once in a great while, it erupts through the bark of the vine as this monstrous bloom opens for only a few days, drowns the air in the smell of death, and rots away. I should be careful here, because there is a common confusion I would rather not add to. People sometimes mix up this flower with another giant, the Titanarum, the tall spike that also earns the nickname corpse flower. They are not the same, and they are not even close relatives. The Titanarum is the tallest flowering structure, a great column made of many tiny flowers. Rafflesia is the largest true single bloom. Both have chosen the smell of death as their advertisement. They simply arrived at it separately. What unsettles me about Rafflesia is how patient it is. It spends almost all of its existence as a secret living inside another living thing, giving nothing away until the one moment it chooses to be seen. It is a reminder, right at the start, that in this forest, the most extraordinary things are usually the ones you cannot see. They are inside something else, waiting. The flower hides inside a vine. The next secret hides inside a mountain. and it is very much alive. Number 6. The floor that moves. In the Malaysian state of Sabah, in the north of the island, there is a limestone hill riddled with caves, and its name is Gomantong. From the outside, it is unremarkable, another green rise in an endless green country. Inside, it is one of the most genuinely difficult places to stand that I have ever entered. The first thing is the sound, and the second is the smell, and the third, when your eyes adjust, is the movement. The roof of the great chamber is hidden in darkness far above you, and that darkness is not empty. It holds bats and cave swiftlets in numbers that are almost impossible to hold in the mind. Not hundreds, not thousands. Millions of small bodies, packed into the stone overhead, wheeling and chittering in a haze, and everything those millions of animals produce, over years, over centuries, falls. It builds on the cave floor into vast, soft black cones of guano, taller than a person. Those cones are not still. They are the reason I chose the word moving. The entire surface is alive with cockroaches, a carpet of them, and dung beetles, and crabs, and a whole nation of pale crawling things that have made their lives on the waste of the animals above. You walk on narrow boards laid across it, and beneath the boards the ground itself seems to ripple and shift in the beam of your torch. There is nothing supernatural in it. It is simply life, doing what life does with an unlimited supply of food, in the dark, without any shame about it. But the human body has an old and honest reaction to that sight, and mine obeyed it. And here is the part that turns a strange cave into a human story. High up in that roof, among the swiftlets, is one of the most valuable foods in the world. Certain swiftlets build their nests almost entirely out of their own hardened saliva. Those nests are the essential ingredient of bird's nest soup, and pound for pound they sell for a small fortune. For generations, men have climbed into the top of this cave to gather them. They go up on ladders and poles made of rattan and bamboo, lashed together, rising dozens of meters into the blackness above that living floor, often with almost nothing to catch them if they slip. People have fallen. People have died doing this, quietly, for a delicacy served in bowls very far away. I will not give you a number for the dead, because an honest number does not exist. What I can tell you is that the danger is entirely real, and that it has been part of the price of this cave for a very long time. When the great nature filmmakers came to Borneo, this is one of the places they came to. If you have ever seen a documentary sequence of a cathedral of stone with a mountain of guano seething with insects at its base, there is a fair chance you are looking at Gomantong. It is not exaggerated for the camera. If anything, a camera makes it easier to watch because it cannot pass on the smell. The cave keeps its horror out in the open, on the floor, for anyone brave enough to look down. The next one hides its danger behind a face so gentle that people pay money to hold it. Number 5. The gentlest killer in the forest. Somewhere in the branches above these rivers, a pair of enormous round eyes is watching the dark. They belong to one of the most disarming animals on the island, a small, slow, soft creature that moves through the canopy at night with great care, gripping the branches with hands that look almost human. This is the slow loris, and it is carrying a secret that almost no one expects. It is venomous. It is, in fact, the only primate on Earth that is. Let me be precise, because this is exactly the sort of fact that gets stretched. Venomous mammals are rare, and venomous primates are rarer still. The slow loris stands more or less alone in its own family. We share a great deal with the primates. We do not share this. The way it works is strange enough to sound made up. On the inside of each elbow, the loris has a gland that produces an oily secretion. On its own, that oil is not much, but when the animal raises its arms above its head, in a pose that looks for all the world like a child stretching, and licks that gland, the secretion mixes with its saliva. And the mixture becomes a weapon. It flows into a set of needle-like lower teeth, and the loris bites. For another loris, that bite can be devastating. For a human being, it is no small thing either. The wound can swell horribly, can fester, and refuse to heal for weeks. And in rare cases, the body reacts so violently, with such a total collapse, that a person can go into life-threatening shock from the bite of an animal that would fit in your two-cupped hands. That raised arms pose deserves one more honest word, because it has been badly misunderstood. Around the world, people have watched clips of a little loris lifting its arms and called it adorable, called it a cry to be tickled. It is nothing of the kind. It is very often a frightened animal, arming itself, reaching for its venom, bracing to defend a life that is already under threat. because the same round-eyed charm that makes us say the wrong thing about that gesture is exactly what has driven these animals into the illegal pet trade in terrible numbers. To make them safe to sell, dealers have been known to cut their teeth out with clippers, no anesthetic, and a great many do not survive it. The forests of Borneo hold their own kinds of slow loris, recognized as distinct only in recent years, and they are under real pressure, and they are protected for good reason. So here is a creature that looks like the softest thing in the jungle, and is quietly one of its few venomous animals, and is being harmed most of all by the very quality that should have kept it safe. The forest has a dark sense of humor about that, I think. The loris hides a weapon behind a gentle face. The next animal hides its whole self, and carries, in that hidden mouth, a pair of teeth out of an older world. Number 4. The ghost with the long teeth. There is a cat on this island that almost no one has ever seen in the wild. Not tourists, not most of the scientists who have spent their careers here. It moves at the edges, in the dark, through the middle branches of the forest, and for the most part we know it only from photographs it takes of itself, without meaning to, when it trips a camera left waiting in the trees. It is the Sunda clouded leopard, and for a long time we did not even know it was its own kind of animal. Until quite recently, we assumed the clouded leopards of Borneo were the same species as those on the Asian mainland. Then, in the mid-2000s, a careful look at their genetics settled it. The Borneo and Sumatra clouded leopard had been going its own way for something like 1 million or 2 million years. It was not a local version of a known cat. It was a separate species that we had simply never told apart. An animal that large, hiding inside our own filing error. It is not a big cat, and I want to be honest about that, because the pictures can fool you. A large one weighs about as much as a medium dog. It will not knock a man down the way a tiger would. On Borneo, though, that hardly matters, because there are no tigers here. The clouded leopard is the top cat on the island, the largest of its kind, the closest thing this forest has to a feline king. And then there are the teeth. For its size, the clouded leopard carries the longest canine teeth of any cat alive today. Not the longest of any large cat, the longest of any living cat, full stop, measured against the skull that holds them. In proportion, it is armed more like the great saber-toothed hunters of the Ice Age than like a modern leopard. People call it a living saber-tooth, and I will use that phrase too, as long as we both understand it is a description of the weaponry, and not a claim about its family tree. It is not a survivor from that vanished world. It has simply, on its own, grown a version of the same terrible tool. Picture it properly. A cat you will almost certainly never meet, that spends its life in the branches over these rivers, that hangs beneath limbs like something poured rather than placed, that we barely understand because it has made itself so hard to find, and that carries, folded into a quiet grey face, the teeth of a predator we thought had died out long ago. It is not the size of it that stays with me. It is the idea of that weapon, moving unseen through the canopy, night after night, over the heads of people who have no notion it is there. Everything so far has kept to the land or to the trees. Now we go down to the water, where the real giants of Borneo live, and where the frightening things stop hiding at all. Number 3. The longest thing in the forest. The river we are on holds the longest snake on the planet. That is not a figure of speech, and it is not folklore. It is the reticulated python, and it lives throughout Borneo, and it is, by length, the longest snake species that exists anywhere. Here I have to steer carefully, because this is an animal buried under a century of exaggeration, and the exaggeration does it no favors. You will have heard of pythons 10 meters long, 30 feet and more. Those numbers are not real. A famous reward, offered 100 years ago for a living snake of that size, has never once been claimed, and it still stands. The truth is quieter, and quite frightening enough. For most of the last century, the largest reliably measured reticulated python was just under 7 meters. And then, only very recently, in the early days of this year, a wild female was carefully measured on the island of Sulawesi at just over 7¼ meters, and recognized as the longest snake ever properly recorded. That is the real ceiling. A snake longer than a saltwater fishing boat, and heavier than a grown man. A python of that size does not need venom. It kills by wrapping, by tightening every time its prey breathes out, until the breath cannot come back and the blood cannot move, and it does it faster than most people imagine. And a snake at the upper end of that range is physically capable of taking prey the size of a human being. Now I have to give you the honest edge of this, because it would be easy and dishonest to leave it hanging. In the wider region, there are a small number of fully documented, verified cases of large reticulated pythons killing and then swallowing adult people whole. They are real. They were photographed, recorded, confirmed beyond doubt, and they are as grim as anything in nature. But every one of those confirmed cases, so far, comes from other islands, from Sulawesi and from Sumatra, not from Borneo itself. I am not going to move them here to frighten you more effectively. The snake lives in these Borneo rivers. It grows to that size here, and the possibility is genuine. But the confirmed record, the actual proven events, belong to other forests. That distinction is the difference between telling you a fact and telling you a feeling, and I would rather give you the fact. Still, knowing all of that, knowing exactly how far the real numbers reach, and no further, I find I look at the black water beside this boat a little differently. Somewhere in these rivers there are snakes longer than the boat I am sitting in. That is not a legend. That is simply the length of a real animal, in the real dark, a few meters from my hand. And it is precisely because that real animal is so extraordinary that people were willing, once, to believe in something far larger. Which brings us to the strangest chapter of all, and the one I most want you to be careful with. Number 2. The monster that was never there. In the early part of 2009, a photograph began to travel around the world. It showed a river in Sarawak, here in Borneo, seen from the air, apparently taken from a helicopter by a team monitoring the floods. And curling through that river, dark and unmistakable, was a serpent. An impossible one. Judged against the width of the river, the thing in the water would have been hundreds of feet long. A Malaysian newspaper printed it. The wider world picked it up. And people gave the creature a name from local legend. They called it the Nabau. I want to tell you what the Nabau is, because it is real in the way that matters, even though the animal is not. In the traditions of the Iban people of Borneo, the Nabau is a colossal serpent, a spirit of the rivers, sometimes given a dragon's head, a being from the old stories about how the world was made. It belongs to the same shelf of the human imagination as every great water dragon in every culture that has ever lived beside deep, dark, moving water. It is a genuine and ancient piece of Borneo's inner world. The photograph, though, is a fake, and I do not say that with any hesitation, because the evidence is not subtle. Look closely, and the water around the serpent is the wrong color, a flat, dead black laid over the real brown of the river, the mark of an image stitched together rather than captured. The scale is impossible. No physical trace of any such creature was ever found, then or since, because there was never anything there to leave one. It was a picture made on a computer, and it fooled a great many people, for a little while, because it landed in a place where the legend had already prepared the ground. But I do not want to end this one with a sneer, because that would miss the real lesson, and the real lesson is the whole point of this list. Ask yourself why a hoax like that works at all. It works because Borneo has spent centuries teaching the people who live here that the river genuinely does hide enormous things. They were not foolish to half believe it. They live beside water that really does conceal reticulated pythons longer than a boat, and giant monitor lizards big enough to send a wake through the shallows, and floodwater that drags whole trees along just beneath the surface, so that for a moment something vast and dark really does move through the current. The legend of the Nabau is not built on nothing. It is built on a lifetime of glimpses of real animals, remembered a little larger each time they are told. The fake serpent is a warning about wanting the monster too badly, and the honest answer to that want is not disappointment. It is the thing we have been traveling toward all night, because there is a real monster in these rivers. It needs no computer, and no legend, and no helicopter photograph, and it is waiting for us at number one, the one that needs no myth. Come back with me to the surface of this tea-dark river, and picture the most ordinary thing, a log, half sunk, drifting with the current. You have passed 100 of them today. Your eye has stopped reporting them. That, precisely that, is the last thing many animals on this island ever see, because some of those logs are not logs. Some of them are the largest reptile alive on the earth today. The saltwater crocodile is the apex of everything we have talked about tonight. Nothing on this island outranks it. It patrols the rivers and the coasts and the estuaries of Borneo, the Kinabatangan in the north, the great river systems of Sarawak, moving between fresh water and the sea as easily as we move between rooms. And it is genuinely, verifiably huge. The largest one ever reliably measured, an animal caught alive some years ago, was well over 6 meters long and weighed more than a ton. A single animal, heavier than a small car, built entirely to do one thing. It is an ambush. That is the whole of its genius. It will hang in the water for an age, showing nothing but a ridge of eye and nostril, learning the habits of whatever comes down to drink. And then, from complete stillness, it moves faster than anything that size has any right to, takes hold, and pulls its prey down into the water to end the matter where it has every advantage and its victim has none. There is no chase. There is barely a warning. There is the surface of the river, and then there is not. Borneo has a story about such an animal, and this is where I have to do my careful work one final time, because the story and the truth are tangled together here in a way that matters. On the Batang Lupa, a river in Sarawak, there are decades of tales about a monstrous crocodile marked with a pale stripe down its back, blamed for death after death, spoken of as if it carried a spirit, said to be beyond any ordinary animal. They gave it a name, Bujang Senang. Now, the honest version. In 1992, a very large crocodile bearing that distinctive light marking was indeed hunted and killed on that river. That is documented. It measured close to 5.5 meters, a true giant of its kind. So far, this is history. But the rest of it, the count of dozens of victims stretching back over the years, the size that grows with every telling until the creature is as long as a bus, the spirit said to live inside it, that is where the record thins out into folklore. A real and enormous crocodile sits at the heart of the legend. The exact tally of the dead, and the supernatural cast around it, grew in the retelling, the way these things always do. And do you see what has happened by the time we reach the end of this list? We have arrived back where the fake serpent left us. Here is the answer to the Nabau. You never needed to invent a 100-foot dragon for the rivers of Borneo. The rivers already hold a real animal, more than 5 meters long, over a ton in weight, that truly does take people, that truly has left grieving families along its banks, and that is lying out there tonight, doing nothing more dramatic than pretending to be a log. The legend was only ever a shadow, thrown by something real. And the real thing was always the more frightening of the two. That, in the end, is what these 7 share. A flower that pretends to be a corpse, a cave floor that crawls, a gentle animal with venom in its elbow, a ghost cat wearing the teeth of a lost age, a snake as long as a boat, a monster that was never there at all, and, waiting under the surface the whole time, the real one, that needs no story to be terrible. I keep coming back to that last idea, because it is the truest thing this island has taught me. We are drawn to the invented monster, because it lets us feel the fear without ever quite believing it. The forest offers us something harder. It offers us the real animal, verified, measured, undeniable, and it asks us to sit beside it in the dark and take it seriously. The fake serpent is easy, the crocodile is not. The river in front of me is flat and quiet again, the color of tea, moving without a sound. I have learned, over the years, not to mistake that stillness for safety. On this island, more than anywhere I have been, calm water usually means only that the thing beneath it has not yet decided to move. I think, next time, I will leave the trees behind altogether. I want to go somewhere the light gives out completely, somewhere even the rivers of Borneo would call deep. I want to go down into the sea. If the forest could hide all of this from us for 100 million years, imagine what is still waiting in the dark under the water. But that is a journey for another night. If you want to keep following the creatures that wait where the light gives out, subscribe to the channel. For now, the river is calm, the forest is loud, and somewhere close by, something patient is pretending to be a log. Thank you for sitting in the boat with me. I will see you on the water again soon.